What started as a quiet Saturday trip to the grocery store turned into a full-blown showdown in a parking lot. When an entitled HOA enforcer picked a fight with the wrong grandma, she didn't know Evelyn was a retired cop with 35 years on the force. This isn't just about a punch. It's about power, corruption, and the moment one community said enough. My name is Michael, and I've never seen my grandmother lose her cool until that day in the grocery store parking lot when a woman named Karen made the biggest mistake of her life. It was an ordinary Saturday in Springfield, Illinois. Grandma Evelyn and I had just finished our weekly grocery run at Jefferson Market. She was in her late 60s, a bit slower on her feet than she used to be, but sharper than anyone I know. She had served 35 years in law enforcement, most of it in community relations. She knew the streets, the people, and more importantly, she knew how power worked and how it was abused. We had just loaded the last bag into the trunk when a white Lexus rolled up aggressively behind us, tires screeching just short of the cart return. Out stepped a woman in designer heels and a blazer that screamed control. A gold badge dangled from a lanyard around her neck. HOA enforcement. She didn't waste time. You took my spot, she barked. My grandmother turned slowly, calm as ever. It's a public lot. No one owns these spaces. You're going to regret this, the woman snapped, pulling out her phone. I'm filming this incident. You've just violated HOA parking protocol. Section 4A. This isn't an HOA lot. Grandma said, This is Jefferson Market. If you have a problem, take it to management. Karen, yes, that was her name, fittingly didn't like that answer. She stepped closer, phone still recording, throwing out threats about citations, complaints, and legal action. Then, without warning, she punched my grandmother square in the face. Everything stopped. My breath caught. Grandma staggered but didn't fall. Her sunglasses slid off. The parking lot went dead silent. A couple standing nearby began filming. A mother shielded her child. Someone shouted, Hey! I rushed to my grandmother's side, but she held up a hand. Let her dig her hole, she said, steadying herself. Just keep the cameras rolling. When the police arrived, Karen flipped the story. She claimed my grandmother had lunged at her, that she'd acted in self-defense. She even tried to flash her fake badge at the officers, demanding they charge Evelyn with assault and disorderly conduct. But Grandma just smiled and handed them her retired badge. Evelyn Rivera, Springfield PD, 35 years. The tone shifted instantly. Karen was questioned and released pending investigation, but we knew this wasn't over. Not with someone like her. 3 days later, bogus violation letters started arriving at our mailbox. Not one, not two. A whole stack of them citing us for unauthorized signage, property neglect, and conduct violations. None of it made sense. We didn't even live in an HOA-governed subdivision, but the letters looked official. The fines were steep. And worse, we found out later that Karen had sent similar letters to at least 8 other households. Grandma wasn't just mad. She was concerned. This isn't about parking, she said. She's running a racket, targeting people she thinks can't or won't fight back. She started asking questions, visiting neighbors, talking quietly at the library, the senior center, church. What she uncovered was chilling. Karen wasn't just overstepping her role, she was the face of a much deeper scheme. Her bogus HOA group had no legal standing. It wasn't registered with the county. The board was made up entirely of her friends and cronies. And somehow, despite that, they had extracted thousands of dollars in fees from residents, particularly the elderly, widows, and immigrants new to the community. Every citation funneled money to a company called Crown Property Solutions. That company, we discovered, was tied to Councilman Richard Belmonte, a name that raised red flags for Grandma immediately. Belmonte was slick, charismatic, a career politician who always seemed to come out clean. But under the surface, he had a trail of real estate redevelopments that left former owners displaced, bullied into selling, and silenced. Grandma called in a favor an old contact at the Springfield PD still working internal affairs. He confirmed our suspicions this wasn't just local drama. It was systemic abuse. That's when we met Evelyn, an investigative journalist with grit and no fear of retaliation. She listened to Grandma's story, then ours, then the others. She poured through documents, followed the money trail, and started asking uncomfortable questions. We knew it was working when Karen filed a cease and desist letter against Ava. We didn't stop. A week later, Ava published her expose, The HOA That Wasn't Power, Punches, and a parking lot assault that pulled back the curtain. It included footage from the parking lot, the punch, Karen's threats, and interviews with over a dozen residents who'd been harassed, fined, and bullied. The story exploded. News vans lined the streets. The mayor ordered a city review of all HOA filings. The police opened a criminal investigation. Ava even received death threats, which she posted, in full, on her follow-up article. And then, one afternoon, as Karen stood on her porch yelling at a news crew, the police arrived with a warrant. She was arrested on charges of assault, fraud, intimidation, and conspiracy to defraud elderly citizens. Belmonte vanished overnight. Rumors swirled of offshore accounts and sealed warrants. He never returned a single call. The aftermath wasn't neat, but it was real. Karen was convicted, fined, sentenced to community service, and placed under a 5-year federal investigation. Her bogus HOA was dissolved. All fines refunded. The neighborhood reorganized. A real, legally registered HOA was created, led by people who actually cared: teachers, small business owners, retirees. They started with transparency. Meetings were public, votes were fair, fines required actual evidence. And then, one summer evening, our street held a block party. People brought out folding chairs and coolers. Kids ran through sprinklers. A few neighbors brought lemon bars with little signs that said, "Not HOA, approved as a joke." And Grandma, she sat in a lawn chair, sunglasses back on, with a root beer in hand. People came up one by one to thank her, some for standing up, others for inspiring them to speak, and a few just to say, "You reminded me it's okay to fight back." Looking back, I realized this story was never really about a parking space. It was about power, abuse, silence. And what happens when one woman refuses to back down because she's seen what happens when you do? Karen thought she was picking a fight with an old lady. She didn't know she was dealing with Evelyn Rivera, retired cop, neighborhood defender, and someone you never, ever want to punch in the face.